Hey you guys, it's Marsha. Welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm showing you how to make easy sauteed cabbage in your skillet. So with this particular recipe, the cabbage comes out tender and not mushy, and it still has a lot of great flavor. So let's jump right into it. All right, so starting off with what we will use, we're gonna use some garlic, some crushed red pepper, some salt and pepper, some olive oil, red wine vinegar, some chicken broth, of course, 1 head of cabbage, an onion, 1 small onion, and some butter that I forgot to show you in this particular clip, but that is important as well. All right, so starting with my cabbage, I have 1 head of green cabbage, and I like to start off by peeling off the first 2 layers because those are usually kind of bruised or dirty. They've been touched on, so I don't want to eat that. So I'm gonna peel the first 2 layers off and discard those. All right, so I'm gonna cut off the bottom of the cabbage because of course we're not gonna eat that part, so that's the hard part. And then we're gonna also cut around the core. So the core is gonna be hard as well, so that's not something that you really want to eat. It's hard to kind of get tender. So we're gonna cut around that part. You can just cut it out completely, but you'll see the way that I cut my cabbage. I'm actually just gonna cut around it. All right, so I'm starting off by cutting my cabbage in half. So I'm just going straight down the middle, and then I'm gonna cut it again to cut it in 4s. All right, so now I have 4 even pieces. So I'm gonna start slicing, starting at the other end, the opposite end of the core, until I get to the center. Once I get to the center, I will turn it on a different side and continue to slice around the core that way. And you can slice your cabbage however you want, honestly, as far as the thickness of the strips, or if you want to kind of do it in chunks, you don't want to do strips, however you want to do it, it's up to you. You can be flexible just as long as you kind of take that middle core piece out. I think some people may rinse out their cabbage before they start cutting it up. For me, it's easier if I cut it up first and then rinse it off all at once together. So that's what I'm doing here. And I'm gonna rinse it really good off camera. And then we want to go ahead and prep our onion as well. So I'm just using 1 small onion. I'm gonna slice up the entire onion. Again, how you want to chop your onion is up to you. I prefer to kind of slice it and keep the onion in, a good size. I don't want it to be too small because onion has a way of just dissolving in whatever you cook it, and you're just left with the flavor anyway. So, there's no need for me to, cut it up in tiny, bite-sized pieces. So I kind of just sliced it up in a nice size. And I made sure to use the entire onion. Again, this is a small one. If you have a large onion, then you probably want to just use half of the onion. But this was a fairly, small, medium-ish onion, so it was no problem with me using the entire onion. All right, so now we are starting with our olive oil. So I am putting in 1 tablespoon of olive oil, and I'm also gonna throw in a tablespoon or a tablespoon and a half of butter. So if you watch my previous sauteed zucchini video where I cooked zucchini and squash on top of the stove in a skillet, then you know that starting with this particular combination is key. I mean, you get so much flavor from the combination of butter and olive oil. It's crazy how much flavor you get. So I'm probably gonna start off with this combination in a lot of my recipes because it's just so much flavor. It tastes really good combined together. So tablespoon of olive oil, tablespoon of butter, and I'm gonna let those 2 melt. All right, so once my butter and my olive oil has melted, I'm gonna add my onions in, and I'm gonna add all of the onions in, and I'm gonna let those onions saute in that butter and that olive oil for a couple of minutes, maybe about, I don't know, 2-3 minutes here, just so they can kind of break down a little bit. And then after that, I will go ahead and add my garlic. All right, so now I'm adding in my garlic, and I wanted to make sure my onions had cooked down a little bit before I added my garlic, because garlic can burn if you cook it for too long. So onions are cooking for a couple of minutes, then goes in the garlic. Then I'm gonna actually season my onions and garlic with a little bit of salt and pepper, because once I add my cabbage in, sometimes it's hard to kind of get seasoning in all the way, work through all of your food. So I kind of sometimes season in layers. So I'm gonna season this onion with salt and pepper, and then once my cabbage goes in, I'll season it again on top of everything. All right, so in goes the cabbage. So depending on how much cabbage you have or how big your cabbage was, you may not be able to fit it all in your skillet at once. So you can just put in half, just like I did. And then I'm gonna mix that in first with the onions, kind of let that cook down for just a minute or two, and then I can go ahead and add the rest of my cabbage on top of that. All right, and once I have all of my cabbage added to my skillet, I'm gonna put a lid on it, and I'm gonna just let that cook, let it do its thing, saute and steam all at once for a couple of minutes. So maybe about 4 or 5 minutes, just undisturbed. After 4 or 5 minutes have passed, I will give it a good stir, and you'll see that it started to cook down a little bit. So that's good. If you need to add even more cabbage on top of that, if you have a lot of cabbage, then now's the time to do it. But all of my cabbage is now in my skillet. So now it's just a matter of letting it cook and adding more flavor to it as I go. All right, so about this time, I'm gonna add in my chicken broth. So I like to start off with a little bit and then just kind of work my way up, because I don't want it to get soggy. So I started off with a half of a cup, and then I think I eventually worked my way up to almost a cup full of chicken broth. The chicken broth helps cook the cabbage even more. So it helps kind of break the cabbage down. It helps tenderize it even more. And the broth will give it some more flavor. So of course I'm not using any meat into this particular recipe. So I want to make sure that I'm still getting some good flavor in with my cabbage. So that's where the broth is going to come into play. All right, so I'm just going to stir that around really good. I did add some more salt and pepper at this particular time, because now my cabbage has cooked down and I feel like it can really absorb the seasonings better. So I got my broth in, I got my salt and pepper. The onions are down there with the olive oil and butter, and now everything is just gonna come together as it cooks. And we're coming to the end, so right when it's almost time to take up the cabbage, I like to add just a little bit of red wine vinegar. This is certainly optional, but I do feel like that it gives it just an extra bit of flavor and punch to it, if that's the right word to use. But you certainly don't have to. If you don't have any red wine vinegar, don't feel obligated to use it. Everything else that you've already put in there will give it great flavor, but I have some on hand, so I'm gonna add just a little bit of that. And then at the very end, I'm also gonna add in my crushed red pepper. So I do feel like this is pretty essential, because it gives it, I don't know, just it just adds more flavor on top of that. You're just kind of building with your flavor. So red pepper can be kind of strong, so you definitely want to make sure you just add a little bit. Sometimes I like to just pour it in my hand and then just take a pinch and sprinkle it on top. So no particular measurement, because I'm telling you, a little bit goes a long way. You just need a little bit of crushed red pepper and it will go a long way. That is it. And so then you just stir that all together and you've pretty much got your complete dish. I'm gonna let this cook together with the red wine vinegar and the red pepper flakes for maybe another minute or two. And then it is time to plate. All right, and there you have it, you guys. You have your sauteed skillet cabbage. This is a great recipe if you want to just use it as your side dish, or you can use it as a main dish. You can add some sausage to it, some chicken sausage, some bacon, and just make it a main dish. I just like having it as cabbage. My husband likes for me to add chicken sausage in it because he wants more than just cabbage. So, you know, sometimes we play around with it, but this is a great recipe if you need to incorporate another green vegetable into your weekly rotation. What I really love about it is that it's not mushy. It still has a great texture to it. It still has some type of bite to it. And that's what you're looking for when you're trying to cook your vegetables. You don't want it to be completely just mush unless you're trying to serve baby food. So this is perfect. I hope you enjoyed this recipe. If you did, please give me a big thumbs up down below. If you try it out, make sure you come back and comment and let me know how you liked it. And of course, if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, please subscribe to my channel so you'll never miss when I upload a video. Until next week, I will see you later.